Hi, friends. So it's been another good week, and I hope that you're finding joy in the journey. It's a beautiful fall here in Pennsylvania, and you need to take advantage of these good weather days while you can. So, I have some good news that I'm going to be sharing with you. But to put it into context, I need to begin in Scripture, and I need to begin with a little bit of the story of our journey in building this new facility here at LEFC. So a few years ago, going back about 3.5 years ago, we began to work with a consultant named Steve Johnson. And Steve, with us, began to work on some strategies by which we would raise funds for a building project. So this would have been in early 2017, probably January or February. And we did a study of the passage I'm going to read here in a moment out of First Chronicles. And the context of these verses here in Chronicles is that David is preparing for the building of the temple. But David himself is not going to be the one to build the temple. Solomon will. But David felt like he owed it to the future generations, his own investment in that which is yet to come. So we actually took our cue from David on how to raise funds for LEFC's building project. Now, originally when we started this, we thought we were doing a 3-phased project that would cover several years and cost in excess of $25 million. But we really saw it as being like a 10 to 15 year long-range plan. With the first part of that plan, the first phase being a $5 million addition that basically was going to give us more lobby space and offices. But after some work and some work of the Lord in providing a good architect and builder, we were able to realize there was an opportunity to do this differently. And it became a single-phase project, still accomplishing 80% of the space that was in the original design, but doing it in one phase at half the cost, $12.5 million. It was a shock, almost too good to be true. But as we investigated it as elders and as a Fund the Vision team and as a building committee, we realized that there was a very strong possibility we could pull that off. And so we began to work to that end. And then we began to prepare for that which was not yet realized, and that is to raise funds for a structure that did not exist, but did exist on paper. We again took our cues from the heart that David carried in preparing for the temple. So let me read that if I can. It says in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verse 1, "Then King David said to the whole assembly, 'My son Solomon, the one whom God has chosen, is young and inexperienced. The task is great, because of this palatial structure is not for man, but for the Lord God. With all my resources I have provided for the temple of my God, gold for the gold work, silver for the silver, bronze for the bronze, and iron for the iron, and wood for the wood, as well as onyx for the settings, and turquoise for the stones of various colors, and all kinds of fine stone and marble, all these in large quantities. Besides, in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give my personal treasures of gold and silver for the temple of my God, over and above everything else I have provided for this holy temple, 3,000 talents of gold and 7,000 talents of refined silver for the overlaying of the walls of the building, for the gold work and the silver work, and for all the work to be done by the craftsmen. Now, who is willing to consecrate themselves to the Lord today?' Then the leaders of families, the officers of the tribes of Israel, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly. They gave towards the work of the temple of God 5,000 talents and 10,000 derricks of gold, 10,000 talents of silver, 18,000 talents of bronze, and 100,000 talents of iron, Anyone who had precious stones gave them to the treasury of the temple of the Lord in the custody of Jehiel the Gershonite. The people rejoiced at the willing response of their leaders, for they had given freely, wholeheartedly to the Lord. David the king also rejoiced greatly. So you ask, how did we model what we did after what David did? David went first. Then in his giving, and he went above and beyond. He gave initially what he should give, and then he went beyond in generosity. And then he said to his leaders, all those who would be in some level of leadership, from those leading in the middle management side to those that are on the highest levels of leadership in the country, and said, and what will you do? And then they did what they did, and all the things that were recorded here. And you see that the people of Israel, the nation, celebrated what their leader and leaders had done. And then they responded in kind if we would have continued to read the text. So what did we do at LAFC? The leaders went first. We collected what we felt like were pledges of faith. And then from those pledges, we invited the rest of the church to join in. Now, as part of the journey of all of this, we had to decide, what are we going to set as our goal? There's obviously the miracle goal of raising all $12.5 million needed. But then there's the goal of, well, what do we want to stretch our people to in the eyes of what we feel like we can do? Now, you need to know that Steve Johnson, our consultant from the EFCA and CIF, said he felt like, based on the giving patterns of our church, the size of our church, and the budget of our church, and the historical giving of our church, that he felt like we could raise between $4.5 to $5 million. Well, you do the math, and it's like, okay, the rest would have to be debt service. So we made some decisions as elders, and we were about ready to make the final decision of setting a goal for $5.5 million, so upping the pledge. Now, Steve Johnson told us that if we raise $4.5 to $5 million, the only way he felt like we could raise that amount of money for size of church we were and the size of budget we had was for at least one donor to be able to give $1 million, and a couple of other donors each giving $500,000. It's like, wow, I don't know that we have anybody in our church that could do those kind of gifts. So as elders, we're like, well, we hear that from somebody who regularly works with churches in raising funds. So he has an educated recommendation for what to expect. But we felt like we needed to establish 5.5. And as we were in the process of praying for that, some others who were a part of the process, but not elders, but were a part of consideration of that which was ahead, also began to pray over this number. And in that time of prayer, we came to the conclusion that we really needed to go for $6.5 million. And there were some reasons why that was felt to be the right goal to establish for the church. Then I took that to the elders, because that 6.5 goal recommendation was given to me, to which then I passed on to the elders, and the elders really responded well to the vision and anticipation of that group that had been praying about this. And then one of our elders, who had been doing some financial homework on this matter, starts leaning in, and he says it's interesting that in his work he felt like that we could continue to do ministry as we hope to do at a level that would continue to expand our ministries if we raised $6.5 million. He figured out, like, what kind of debt management can we do and still be able to move and advance the ministries forward without being bogged down by a debt load. And he had come to the conclusion, through doing the mathematical analysis, came to the conclusion that $6.5 million was what we really should get to. Now, our banks were saying we could borrow up to, and again, our bank is actually our denomination and their financial arm, CIF, Christian Investors Foundation. And so we began to really pray seriously about the $6.5 million, because that would definitely bring us way down from an $8.5 million debt load, which would mean we would only raise $4 million. So through prayer, we came to the conclusion, you know what? We had some who spiritually discerned 6.5 million and gave the reasons for it. Then we had one who's mathematically gifted that goes through and comes through an analysis saying that we can really advance the ministries of the church if we raise 6.5. So we decided that our victory goal as a church would be 6.5 million. Our miracle goal, beyond any kind of fathomability, was 12.5. So here we are, after a commitment of 2018, 2019, and 2020 pledges. We sit at 6.150 raised. So we are 350,000 away from the 6.5 million part. Our largest gift from any single donor was 350,000. We had several gifts in the $200,000 range, but we got nothing close to the 500,000 or the 500,000 or the 1 million that our consultant said we would need to raise 4.5 to 5. So we're sitting at over 6 when you consider monies raised plus pledges outstanding, that we are at 6.150. And we have this final quarter of our 3-year commitment yet to go. And so we've been praying, like, how do we then get to the 6.5 million mark so that we can truly realize the ministry opportunities that we have envisioned for our church and not be held back in any manner by a debt load. And so I brought some ideas to the Fund the Vision team. And what I didn't expect was what came next. So they heard my ideas out and said, Pastor, that's a nice idea, but I think we've got something else we would like to run by you. There's about 10 people in the room, and I did not know what was about to happen. So the leader of that meeting informs me that a group of people had come together and are offering a $250,000 matching gift. So for every dollar that is given between now and December 31st of 2020 will be matched by another dollar, up to $250,000. I don't know who the donors are. I could suspect, but it doesn't matter. Out of the heart of generosity, they are doing what David said. It's like, I gave, and then I gave again. What will you as leaders do? And then what will the nation do in following our lead? So some people in our church have said, we've given, now we're going to give some more. Will you meet us in that generosity? And so that is our invitation, that any gift that you have given above your pledge, so if you've already fulfilled your pledge, anything you would give more would be matched dollar for dollar, up to $250,000. If you still have outstanding pledges, let's say you still owe $500 or $1,000 to the pledge, anything you give above that, so if you owe $500 and you give an extra $100, that $100 becomes $200. If you owe $1,000, you give another $1,000 on top of that, so you give $2,000 between now and the end of the year. Your $1,000 pledge plus another $1,000, that extra $1,000 becomes $2,000. So what will you do? David says here, now who is willing to consecrate themselves to the Lord today? The challenge is being given to me as it is being given to you. I'm merely passing it on. I have fulfilled my pledge. We were able to finish our pledge giving in the last couple weeks. Now I'm praying about, Lord, what does it mean to give again? And I and my wife are praying about that. And I know that anything we give will be doubled by somebody else who I do not know. You'll be hearing more about this on the Sundays ahead. We will not be giving you a report as we go. We will wait till the end of the year and see what the Lord has given. And on January 4th, we will tell the church where we landed. Will you take on the challenge that David gave his generation in preparing for the next? I've given and then given again. What will you do? That's a challenge for me and you. So will you join me in prayer to see how the Lord would put it upon our hearts to give again?